Maya-chan had survived 3 tours of duty in the worst war zones humanity had ever seen. She'd fought alien invaders on burning planets, led rescue missions through enemy fire, and earned medals that most soldiers only dreamed of. At 19, she was already a decorated war hero with scars that told stories of battles fought light years from Earth. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for the most terrifying mission of her life. Returning to Lincoln High School to finish her senior year. Walking through those familiar hallways felt like stepping into an alien world more foreign than any battlefield she'd conquered. The smell of cheap pizza and teenage anxiety hit her harder than plasma cannon fire ever had. Students whispered and stared as she passed, their problems seeming impossibly small after everything she'd witnessed. Maya thought she knew what hell looked like. It had burning skies and the screams of dying worlds. She was wrong. Hell was 17-year-olds arguing about prom themes while she still woke up reaching for weapons that weren't there, trying to forget the friends she'd buried on distant stars. The alarm clock screamed at 6:30 a.m., and Maya's hand shot out to silence it before her brain fully woke up. For a split second, she expected to hear Sergeant Martinez calling morning formation. Instead, she heard her mother humming downstairs, making breakfast like nothing had changed. Everything had changed. Maya sat on the edge of her childhood bed, looking at clothes that felt like costumes. Jeans, a simple blue t-shirt, no armor, no weapons, no squad to lead into another day of survival. Just high school. Her reflection in the mirror showed a girl who looked too old for her age. Short black hair that she'd kept military regulation, even though she didn't have to anymore. Dark eyes that had seen too much. A thin scar running from her left temple to her jawline, a souvenir from the Battle of Kepler Station. "Maya, breakfast," her mother called. Downstairs, her parents tried too hard to act normal. Her father, a quiet accountant, read his tablet and sipped coffee. Her mother, a nurse, packed lunches and asked about homework Maya hadn't done yet. "You excited about your first day back, sweetheart?" her mother asked, not meeting her eyes. "Sure, Mom." The lie came easily. Maya had learned to lie to protect people she loved. Her parents knew she'd been in the military, knew she'd fought in the Centauri War, but they didn't know the details. They didn't know about the nightmares, the way loud noises made her duck for cover, or how she still slept with her back to the wall. They were trying to give her normal. She would try to take it. Lincoln High School looked exactly the same as when Maya had left 3 years ago. Same brick walls, same cracked parking lot, same groups of students clustering around the entrance like defensive formations. Maya walked through the front doors and immediately felt every eye in the hallway turn toward her. Conversations stopped. Phones came out. She was the girl who'd left school to fight aliens and came back. In a small town like Riverside, that made her either a hero or a freak. Maybe both. Her first class was advanced literature with Mrs. Henderson, who'd taught Maya as a freshman. The teacher's face lit up when Maya walked in. "Class, we have Maya-chan joining us today. Maya, why don't you tell us about your experiences?" Maya stood at the front of the classroom, looking at faces that seemed impossibly young. Kids who worried about test grades and dating drama while she'd been watching entire colonies burn. "I was in the military," she said simply. "Now I'm back to finish school." She sat in the back corner, always keep your exit routes clear, and tried to focus on a discussion about symbolism in ancient literature. The boy next to her, Kevin something, kept sneaking glances at the scar on her face. The girl in front, Sarah, took not-so-subtle photos with her phone. Maya lasted 20 minutes before the walls started closing in. She raised her hand. "May I use the restroom?" In the empty hallway, Maya pressed her back against the lockers and tried to breathe. 3 years ago, she'd walked these same halls worried about pop quizzes and lunch money. Now she was hyperventilating because someone dropped a textbook and her first instinct was to hit the ground. "You okay?" Maya spun around, automatically reaching for a sidearm that wasn't there. A girl with purple-streaked hair and concerned eyes stood a few feet away, hands raised peacefully. Sorry, didn't mean to startle you. I'm Zoe. You're the war hero, right? I'm not a hero. My brother was in the Centauri system, navigator on a supply ship. He said the ground troops saved their asses more times than he could count. Zoe studied Maya's face without judgment. He also said coming home was harder than leaving. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Yeah, it is. Want to skip first period? I know a place. Zoe led Maya to the roof of the arts building, accessed through a maintenance door that was supposed to be locked. It was quiet up there, with a view of the parking lot and the mountains beyond. I come here when the fake gets too much, Zoe said, sitting cross-legged on the gravel. My parents got divorced last year, and everyone acts like they know what I'm going through. But they don't. They just want the drama. Maya sat carefully, keeping her back to a wall. How do you deal with it? Badly, mostly. But it helps to remember that their problems aren't fake to them. They're just smaller. Doesn't make them wrong, just different. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Maya found herself relaxing for the first time since she'd walked through the school doors. What was it like? Zoe asked quietly. The war. Most people ask that question wanting exciting stories or gory details. Zoe asked like she actually wanted to know. Loud, Maya said. And boring, mostly. A lot of waiting around, being scared. Then 30 seconds of absolute terror where everything goes wrong at once. Then more waiting. Did you kill people? Yes. Do you regret it? Maya thought about Kepler Station, about the hegemony troops who'd been executing civilians when her squad arrived. About the choice between pulling the trigger and watching innocents die. No. But I regret needing to. The bell rang, signaling the end of first period. Zoe stood and brushed gravel off her jeans. Come on, war hero. Let's go face the fishbowl. The cafeteria was a minefield of social hierarchies that Maya had forgotten existed. Athletes at one table, theater kids at another, honor students near the windows, everyone else scattered around in smaller groups. Maya bought a sandwich and looked for somewhere to sit. Every option felt wrong. She didn't belong with any of these groups anymore. Maya! Zoe waved her over to a table in the corner where several students sat who didn't quite fit anywhere else. Come meet the island of misfit toys. Maya sat down gratefully. Zoe introduced her to the group. Marcus, a senior who spent most of his time coding and building robots. Emma, a junior who wrote dark poetry and wore all black. David, a sophomore who collected vintage comic books and knew way too much about obscure superheroes. So, Marcus said without preamble. What's the weirdest alien you fought? Marcus. Emma smacked his arm. You can't just ask that. Why not? She's a war hero. War heroes have stories. Maya found herself smiling for the first time all day. The hegemony forces weren't really alien. They were human, mostly. Just different. Enhanced. Modified. Enhanced how? David asked, leaning forward with the intense focus of someone who'd read every science fiction novel ever written. Genetic modifications. Cybernetic implants. They were trying to create perfect soldiers. Maya picked at her sandwich. Thing is, they forgot that perfect soldiers aren't necessarily perfect people. What do you mean? Zoe asked. They were stronger, faster, smarter in some ways. But they'd lost something too. Empathy, maybe. Or hope. They fought like machines, followed orders without question. Made them predictable. Did you ever capture any of them? Marcus asked. Maya nodded slowly. A few. We had this one guy, couldn't have been more than 20. Covered in scars from surgeries. Half his face replaced with metal. He spoke perfect English, had memories of growing up on Earth. But when we asked him why he was fighting, he just looked confused. Like the question didn't make sense. The table had gone quiet. Other conversations continued around them, but Maya's new friends were hanging on every word. What happened to him? Emma asked softly. Prisoner exchange. His people wanted him back, and we had some of ours they'd captured. Maya set down her sandwich. Never found out what happened to him after that. Do you think they could be cured? David asked. The modifications, could they be reversed? I don't know. Maybe some of them. But the psychological conditioning. Maya shook her head. That might be harder to fix than the physical stuff. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. As they gathered their trash, Zoe nudged Maya's shoulder. Thanks for sharing that. I know it wasn't easy. Maya looked around the table at these kids who'd accepted her without question, who asked hard questions but didn't judge the answers. Thanks for listening. Maya's afternoon classes passed in a blur of familiar subjects made strange by everything she now knew. World history became a series of conflicts she'd studied from textbooks but also lived through variations of. English literature took on new meaning when you'd seen the real consequences of power and corruption. But it was gym class that nearly broke her. Coach Williams had Maya suit up with everyone else, assuming she'd want to show off her military fitness. What he didn't understand was that Maya's relationship with physical training had nothing to do with games or competition anymore. The class was playing dodgeball, a stupid, simple game that Maya had probably enjoyed as a freshman. Now, standing in a gymnasium with rubber balls flying through the air and kids shouting, all she could think about was the ambush at Firebase Delta. The first ball that came toward her, Maya caught easily. The second one, thrown harder by Jake Peterson. Football team, full of himself. She caught and fired back with enough force to knock Jake off his feet. The gym went silent. Maya, Coach Williams said carefully, maybe dial it back a little. But Maya was somewhere else. She was watching Tommy Rodriguez take shrapnel to the chest while enemy fire echoed off concrete walls. She was calling for medics while return fire filled the air around her. Another ball came at her. Maya dodged, rolled, came up throwing. The ball hit the wall behind the other team with a crack that sounded like gunfire. Chan! Coach Williams blew his whistle. Take a knee. The sound of the whistle cut through whatever place Maya's mind had gone. She found herself crouched in the middle of the gym floor, 20 pairs of teenage eyes staring at her with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. I'm fine, she said, standing up, but her hands were shaking. Go see the nurse, Coach Williams said quietly. Take your time. Maya walked out of the gym with as much dignity as she could manage, aware that by tomorrow everyone in school would know that the war hero had freaked out during dodgeball. The school nurse, Mrs. Patterson, was the same woman who'd bandaged Maya's scraped knees and treated her headaches as a kid. She looked up when Maya walked in, took one look at her face, and pointed to the cot in the corner. Lie down. I'll get you some water. Maya sat on the edge of the cot, not trusting herself to lie down. Lying down meant being vulnerable, meant not being able to see the exits. Want to talk about it? Mrs. Patterson asked, handing her a paper cup of water. Not really. Panic attack? Something like that. Mrs. Patterson sat down across from her. My nephew came back from overseas a few years ago. Army. He had a hard time adjusting too. I'm not adjusting badly, Maya said automatically. I'm fine. Honey, you just had a meltdown during gym class. That's not fine. Maya drank the water and tried to figure out what to say. How do you explain that dodgeball reminded you of watching your friends die? How do you make a school nurse understand that the sound of sneakers squeaking on gym floors sounded too much like boots on metal grating? It's just loud, Maya said finally. Everything here is so loud and chaotic, but it's all safe chaos, fun chaos, and my brain doesn't know how to process that anymore. Mrs. Patterson nodded. Have you talked to anyone? A counselor? The military has counselors. I did the required sessions. That's not what I asked. Maya looked at her hands. I don't know how to talk about it. What am I supposed to say? That I miss the war? That sounds crazy. Do you miss it? Parts of it, Maya admitted. I miss knowing what I was supposed to do. I miss having a purpose that mattered. I miss. She stopped, surprised by her own honesty. You miss what? I miss feeling like I was good at something. Over there I knew who I was. I was a soldier, a leader. I was someone people could count on. Here, I'm just a weird kid who left school and came back broken. Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Maya, do you know what Jennifer Martinez said to me last week? Maya shook her head. She said she was terrified that you coming back would ruin her chances at valedictorian. That someone who'd actually done something important would make all her achievements look silly. That's ridiculous. Is it? You're 19 years old, and you've led people in combat. You've made life and death decisions. You've seen things most adults never will. Of course, that intimidates teenagers who worry about prom dates and college applications. Maya stared at her. So what am I supposed to do? Pretend I wasn't there? Act like none of it happened? No. But maybe understand that you're not the only one struggling to figure out where you fit. Maya was putting books in her locker when she overheard two sophomore girls talking at the next row of lockers. My dad says she probably has PTSD, one was saying. He was in Vietnam, and he says all soldiers come back messed up. I heard she killed like 100 people, the other replied. Jenny's older sister said Maya used to be really quiet and nice, but war changes people, makes them violent. Maya slammed her locker harder than necessary. The girls jumped and scurried away, whispering. She was getting her jacket when someone cleared their throat behind her. Maya turned to find a boy she didn't recognize. Tall, thin, wearing a leather jacket from the debate team. You're Maya Chun, he said. Yeah. I'm Alex Morrison. I wanted to thank you. Maya frowned. For what? My dad was on the transport ship Meridian. The hegemony forces had it surrounded, were picking off escape pods one by one. Ground forces, your unit, I think, held them off long enough for the civilians to get away. Maya remembered the Meridian. Remembered 3 days of brutal fighting on the surface of Kepler 442b while transport ships evacuated a research colony. Remembered losing 6 good soldiers to buy time for people they'd never meet. Your dad made it out? Yeah. He's got some shrapnel scars and nightmares, but he's alive. Because of what you did. Alex shifted awkwardly. I know high school is probably weird after all that. Just wanted you to know that not everyone here thinks you're a freak. Some of us know what you sacrificed. After Alex left, Maya stood by her locker trying to process the conversation. She'd been so focused on how strange everything felt, how disconnected she was from her old life, that she'd forgotten why she'd fought in the first place. She'd fought so that kids like Alex could worry about debate tournaments instead of evacuation procedures. Maya walked home instead of taking the bus, needing time to think. Riverside looked the same as it always had, tree-lined streets, small houses with neat lawns, the kind of place where the biggest excitement was usually the annual corn festival. 3 years ago, she'd been desperate to escape this boring little town. Now the quiet felt like a gift. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Heard about gym class. You okay? Maya smiled despite everything. It had been a long time since someone her age had asked if she was okay and actually wanted an answer. I will be, she typed back. Want to hang out this weekend? No dodgeball involved. Yeah, I'd like that. At home, Maya found her parents in the kitchen, doing dishes and pretending they hadn't been talking about her when she walked in. How was your first day back, sweetheart? Her mother asked with forced brightness. Maya considered lying, giving them the easy answer they wanted. Instead, she sat down at the kitchen table and decided to try something different. Hard, she said. Really hard. I had a panic attack during gym class, and I think I scared some of my classmates. I feel like an alien trying to figure out how to be human again. Her parents exchanged glances. Her father sat down across from her, setting his dish towel aside. Maya, he said quietly, we've been worried about you. You came home, and you've been trying so hard to act like everything is normal, but we know it isn't. We just didn't know how to help. I don't know how to help either, Maya admitted. I keep thinking I should be over it by now. It's been 6 months since my discharge. I should be able to handle high school. Honey, her mother said, sitting down next to her. You spent 3 years in combat zones. You were responsible for other people's lives. You can't just switch that off because you came home. But I have to live here now. I have to figure out how to be a regular person. Who says you have to be regular? Her father asked. You're not regular. You're extraordinary. Maybe the trick isn't becoming who you used to be. Maybe it's figuring out who you are now. Maya felt tears stinging her eyes. The first tears she'd allowed herself since coming home. I don't know who that is, she whispered. Then I guess you get to find out, her mother said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. And we'll help however we can. Word spread quickly that Maya was working with some of the school's troubled students. Some kids thought it was cool, the war hero helping other misfits. Others thought it was weird, or dangerous, or just another sign that Maya didn't fit in. Maya didn't care what they thought. For the first time since coming home, she felt like she was doing something that mattered. She started meeting with Lisa the following week. The junior was so quiet that Maya barely heard her speak for the first 3 sessions. But gradually, Lisa began to open up about the anxiety that made her feel like she was drowning, about parents who used her as a weapon against each other. I just want them to stop fighting, Lisa said during their 4th meeting. I want to fix it, but I don't know how. You can't fix other people, Maya said gently. Trust me, I've tried. You can only control your own actions, your own responses. But if I was better, maybe they wouldn't have problems. Maya recognized the guilt, the misplaced sense of responsibility. She'd carried the same burden about soldiers she couldn't save, civilians she couldn't protect. Lisa, their marriage problems aren't about you. They're about them. You're not responsible for fixing adults' mistakes. It was advice Maya was still learning to take herself. Jennifer Martinez cornered Maya after AP history class, where they'd been discussing the ethics of warfare in the modern age. You can't keep dominating every discussion, Jennifer hissed. Some of us are trying to maintain our class rank. Maya looked at her former classmate with something approaching pity. Jennifer, I'm not trying to compete with you. Right, you're just casually dropping insights about military strategy and international relations while the rest of us are working from textbooks. Would you prefer I pretend I don't know anything about it? I'd prefer you remember that some of us have been working toward college scholarships since freshman year. We can't all run off and play soldier when things get tough. The accusation still stung, but Maya was getting better at seeing the fear behind Jennifer's anger. You think I took the easy way out? Maya asked quietly. Didn't you? When school got competitive, when you couldn't keep up academically, you found an escape. Now you're back acting like you're better than everyone else. Maya felt the old anger rising, the defensive fury that had gotten her through firefights and impossible odds. But instead of striking back, she thought about what Ms. Rodriguez had said about peer support, about showing strength instead of weakness. Jennifer, Maya said, I left school because I couldn't handle sitting in a classroom knowing there were people dying while I worried about test scores. I joined the military because I wanted to do something that mattered. It wasn't easier. It was harder than anything I'd ever imagined. I watched friends die. I made decisions that will haunt me forever. I came home with scars, inside and out. Jennifer's angry expression wavered. But you know what? Maya continued. You're right about one thing. I am different now. I can't pretend that what we're studying in these classes is just academic theory, because I've lived it. I can't get excited about high school drama because I've seen real problems. That doesn't make me better than anyone else. It just makes me different. So what am I supposed to do? Jennifer asked, and for the first time she sounded less angry than desperate. I've worked so hard to be the best at everything, and now you're here making it all look trivial. Maybe that's the real problem, Maya said gently. Maybe you've been working so hard to be the best that you forgot to figure out what you actually want to be good at. Zoe convinced Maya to help with the school's fall play, not as an actor, but as a technical consultant. The play was a war drama, and the drama teacher, Mr. Chun, no relation, wanted to make sure the military elements looked realistic. Maya found herself in the strange position of teaching 17-year-olds how to hold prop weapons, how to move tactically, how to look like soldiers instead of kids playing dress-up. "Keep your head down," she told Kevin, the boy who'd been sneaking glances at her scar in English class. "In a real firefight, you'd be dead already." "This is just for the play," Kevin protested. "If you're going to do something, do it right," Maya replied. "Besides, your character is supposed to be a combat veteran. Act like one." Working with the theater kids was surprisingly therapeutic. They listened to her directions without judgment, asked practical questions about tactics and military procedure, treated her expertise as valuable rather than threatening. During one rehearsal, Emma, the goth poet from lunch, pulled Maya aside. "Can I ask you something? For my character development." "Sure. What's the hardest part about coming home?" Maya thought about it. "Feeling like you don't fit anywhere. Like you're too changed for your old life but too damaged for a new one." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "My character lost her brother in the war. She's trying to figure out how to live without him." "What conclusion does she reach?" "That she has to find a way to honor his memory by living fully, even though part of her died with him." Maya felt something shift in her chest. "That's actually pretty wise. Thanks. I think you've been doing that, honoring your fallen friends by helping kids like Ethan and Lisa." Maya stared at Emma, this quiet girl who wrote dark poetry and saw more than most adults. "When did you get so smart?" "Trauma matures you fast. Different kinds of trauma, but still." Maya's parents requested a meeting with her teachers to discuss her adjustment challenges. Maya dreaded the conversation, imagining a room full of adults dissecting her problems like a science experiment. Instead, she found teachers who were genuinely concerned and surprisingly insightful. Maya's academic performance is. Maya's parents requested a meeting with her teachers to discuss her adjustment challenges. Maya dreaded the conversation, imagining a room full of adults dissecting her problems like a science experiment. Instead, she found teachers who were genuinely concerned and surprisingly insightful. "Maya's academic performance is exceptional," Mrs. Henderson said, looking at her notes. "But she seems disconnected from the material, like she's going through the motions." "She participates in class discussions," Mr. Parsons added, "but only when directly asked, and her insights are often more sophisticated than what we'd expect from a typical senior." Maya shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I'm just trying to do the work." "That's exactly the problem," said Ms. Rodriguez. "You're capable of so much more than just doing the work. You have real-world experience that could enrich everyone's learning, but you're holding back. Because every time I share what I know, someone accuses me of showing off or trying to make them look bad," Maya replied. Her father leaned forward. "Is that really why you're holding back?" Maya looked around the room at the faces of adults who'd known her before she left, who were trying to understand who she'd become. "I'm holding back because I don't know how to connect what I learned over there with what we're studying here. When we read about conflict resolution in history class, I think about friends who died because diplomacy failed. When we study chemistry, I remember using those same principles to breach enemy fortifications. Everything here feels like playing house after you've lived in the real world." The room was quiet for a moment. "Then maybe," said Mr. Chun from the drama department, "we need to find ways to make the connections more meaningful. You've been helping with our play, and the students are learning more about history and human nature from your perspective than they have all semester. What if we created some kind of mentorship program?" Ms. Rodriguez suggested. "Not just for troubled students, but for anyone who wants to understand how classroom learning applies to real-world situations." Maya's mother looked at her daughter. How would you feel about that? Maya considered it. The work she'd been doing with Ethan and Lisa felt important, but it was also emotionally draining. Teaching other students about practical applications of their coursework might be a way to contribute without having to relive trauma. I could try it, she said finally. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not here to be anyone's inspirational story or cautionary tale. I'm just trying to graduate and figure out what comes next. What does come next? Asked Mrs. Henderson gently. Maya realized she hadn't really thought about it. College had been the plan before she left, but now the idea of 4 more years in classrooms felt overwhelming. I don't know, she admitted. I used to think I had it all figured out. Now I'm just taking it one day at a time. The mentorship program started small. Maya agreed to lead a weekly study group where students could discuss how their academic subjects applied to real-world situations. She expected maybe 5 or 6 kids to show up. 20 students packed into the library conference room for the first meeting. Okay, Maya said, looking at the eager faces around the table. Let's start with what you're actually curious about. Not what you think you should be curious about. What keeps you up at night wondering? Hands shot up around the room. How do you make life or death decisions? Asked Sarah, the girl who'd been taking sneaky photos of Maya's scar. You don't overthink it, Maya replied. In combat, hesitation gets people killed. You train until the right response becomes instinctive, and then you trust your training. But what if you make the wrong choice? Pressed David, the comic book collector. Then you learn from it and try to make better choices next time. If you survive. The blunt honesty seemed to resonate with them more than platitudes would have. How do you deal with people not understanding what you've been through? This from Lisa, who'd been coming out of her shell in their one-on-one sessions. You find the people who do understand, or who at least try to. And you accept that some people never will, and that's not your problem to solve. Marcus raised his hand. Do you regret going to war? Maya thought about it seriously. I regret that war was necessary. I regret the friends I lost. I regret some of the things I had to do. But I don't regret trying to make a difference. Would you do it again? This from Jennifer Martinez, who'd been sitting quietly in the back corner. Maya looked at her former rival with surprise. You came. I was curious, Jennifer said defensively. Would you do it again? Knowing what I know now? Probably not. But that's not because it was wrong. It's because I understand the cost better now. After the formal discussion ended, Jennifer lingered as other students filed out. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. I've been treating you like competition when I should have been treating you like someone who's been through something terrible and is trying to readjust. Maya studied Jennifer's face. What changed your mind? My older sister. She's in college now, and she told me something after I complained about you on the phone. She said that I was so focused on being the smartest person in the room that I was missing the chance to learn from the most experienced person in the room. I'm still just 19, Jennifer. I don't have all the answers. No, but you have answers to questions I never thought to ask. Like how to make decisions when there's no clear right choice. How to lead people when everyone's scared. How to keep going when everything seems hopeless. Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Respect from a peer. Want to grab coffee sometime? Jennifer asked. Outside of school, just to talk. Yeah, Maya said, surprised by how much she meant it. I'd like that. 3 months into the school year, Maya thought she was finding her rhythm. The mentorship program was going well, her grades were solid, and she was actually making friends again. Then came the bomb drill. It was supposed to be routine, a practice evacuation in case of emergency. Maya knew it was coming, had mentally prepared herself for the alarm bells and organized chaos. What she hadn't prepared for was the sound of helicopters overhead. The moment she heard the rotors, Maya was back on Kepler Station. Enemy aircraft screaming overhead while her squad huddled in a bombed-out building. waiting for extraction that might never come. The school hallway became a war zone, fellow students became civilians to protect, and the exit signs became escape routes from hostile territory. Maya found herself pressed against a wall, scanning for threats that weren't there, her hand reaching for a weapon she didn't carry. Around her, students were filing calmly toward the exits. Laughing and chatting like this was just another boring interruption to their day. Maya! Zoe's voice seemed to come from very far away. Maya, you're hyperventilating. Maya looked down and realized her hands were shaking, her breathing shallow and rapid. The helicopters were gone, had probably been gone for several minutes, but her body was still in combat mode. I need to get out of here, Maya managed. Zoe didn't ask questions. She simply took Maya's arm and guided her away from the crowd, through a side door, onto the same roof where they'd first talked months ago. Better? Zoe asked once they were alone. Maya sat heavily on the gravel, trying to slow her breathing. I thought I was past this. Past what? The flashbacks, the panic attacks. I was doing so well. Zoe sat beside her. You've been doing better. That's not the same as being cured. I can't keep falling apart every time something reminds me of the war. What kind of life is that? The kind where you're still alive, Zoe said simply. The kind where you're helping other people who are struggling. The kind where you're slowly figuring out how to be human again. Maya looked at her friend because that's what Zoe was. She realized, a real friend, not just someone who tolerated her weirdness. How did you get so wise about trauma? Your parents' divorce was bad, but it's not the same as... My brother, Zoe said quietly. The one I mentioned who was in the Centauri system, he didn't just navigate supply ships. He was on a medical transport that got hit, spent 6 hours in a life pod, listening to other survivors die, one by one until rescue arrived. Maya stared at her. You never said. He made me promise not to tell anyone at school. He was worried people would treat him differently. Sound familiar? Is he okay now? He's alive. He's in therapy. Some days are better than others. But he's building a life, piece by piece. Zoe picked up a piece of gravel and threw it off the roof. He told me something once that I think you need to hear. What? He said healing isn't about forgetting what happened or going back to who you used to be. It's about integrating the experience into who you're becoming. You don't get over trauma. You grow around it. Maya felt tears on her cheeks and realized she was crying for the second time since coming home. I'm tired of being broken, she whispered. You're not broken, Zoe said firmly. You're wounded. There's a difference. Broken things can't be fixed. Wounded things heal. The next week, Maya did something she'd been avoiding since her first day back. She volunteered to give a presentation about her military service. Mrs. Henderson had been asking for months if Maya would share her experiences with the class. Maya had always declined, not wanting to be put on display. But after the bomb drill incident, she realized that hiding from her past wasn't protecting anyone, least of all herself. I want to talk about what war actually looks like, Maya began, standing in front of her AP literature class. Not the sanitized version you see in movies or read about in history books. The real thing. She had their complete attention. Even Jennifer Martinez was leaning forward, taking notes. War isn't heroic. It's not glorious. It's mostly boring, terrifying, and senseless. You spend weeks doing nothing but waiting, and then 30 seconds where everything goes wrong at once and people die for reasons that don't make sense. Maya clicked to her first slide. Not a graphic image, just a photo of her squad before their first deployment. Young faces, confident smiles, military precision. This is my squad from 3 years ago. We thought we knew what we were getting into. We'd been trained. We were ready. We believed in our mission. She clicked to the next slide. This is us after our first tour. The second photo showed the same people, but they looked different. Older, harder, with shadows in their eyes that hadn't been there before. War changes you in ways you don't expect. It's not just the physical danger, it's the moral complexity. In literature, we study characters who face impossible choices, who have to decide between competing values. In war, those choices aren't theoretical. She told them about the civilian transport on Kepler Station, about the choice between following evacuation protocol and staying to help wounded civilians, about the hegemony soldier who'd been no older than they were, who died calling for his mother in a language Maya didn't understand. The hardest part isn't the fighting, Maya said. It's coming home and trying to figure out how to care about normal things again. How do you get excited about a football game when you've seen cities burn? How do you worry about test scores when you've held dying friends in your arms? The classroom was completely silent. But here's what I've learned over the past few months, Maya continued. Normal things matter because they're the reason we fought. The right to worry about trivial problems is actually a privilege. The fact that you can sit in this classroom debating literature instead of hiding from enemy fire means that somewhere, somehow, people made sacrifices to preserve that possibility. She looked around the room, meeting eyes with students she'd been avoiding for months. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty for having ordinary teenage problems. I'm telling you this because your ordinary problems are exactly what make life worth living. The fact that the biggest crisis in your life is college applications or relationship drama means you're free. And freedom is what we were fighting for. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Alex Morrison, the boy whose father had survived the Meridian evacuation, started clapping. Within seconds, the entire class was applauding. But it wasn't the applause that mattered to Maya. It was the understanding she saw in their faces, the recognition that her experiences weren't just spectacle or inspiration. They were a bridge between the world of the classroom and the world beyond. Spring semester brought new challenges and unexpected opportunities. Maya's mentorship program had grown into an official part of the school's curriculum, and she found herself working with teachers to develop real-world applications for academic subjects. Her relationship with her parents had improved too. They'd started family therapy, learning how to communicate across the gap between Maya's experiences and their civilian life. It wasn't easy, but it was honest in a way their interactions hadn't been since she'd come home. I've been thinking about college, Maya told them over dinner one evening. Her mother nearly choked on her pasta. Really? Not traditional college. But there are programs for veterans, ways to use military experience as a foundation for academic study. International relations, conflict resolution, psychology. What would you want to study? Her father asked. Maya thought about Ethan, who was doing better but still struggled with anger. About Lisa, who'd found her voice again but still battled anxiety. About all the students in her mentorship program who were learning to connect classroom theory with real-world application. I think I want to be a counselor. Specifically, I want to work with people who've experienced trauma, military veterans, but also civilians who've been through difficult things. That makes sense, her mother said. You've been doing that work informally already. It feels right, Maya agreed. Like I'm using what I learned over there for something constructive instead of just trying to forget it. Her parents exchanged the kind of look that meant they were proud but trying not to make a big deal about it. There's a program at the state university, her father said casually. They have a good psychology department and special support services for veteran students. Maya smiled. I'll look into it. Senior year passed more quickly than Maya had expected. The mentorship program continued to grow. Her friendship with Zoe deepened, and she even developed a grudging respect for Jennifer Martinez, who'd turned out to be a better person than either of them had realized in freshman year. Ethan made it through his sophomore year without any major incidents. Lisa found her confidence and was even considering running for student government. The theater kids put on a war drama that was both heartbreaking and hopeful, informed by Maya's technical advice but ultimately telling their own story about healing and resilience. On graduation day, Maya stood in her cap and gown, looking out at an auditorium full of families and friends. 3 years ago, she'd thought this moment would feel like the beginning of her real life. Now she understood that real life had been happening all along. In war zones and high school hallways, in moments of terror and triumph, in the simple act of getting up each morning and choosing to keep going. Maya-chan, the principal announced, and Maya walked across the stage to accept her diploma. The applause was enthusiastic, but what meant the most were the individual voices she could pick out. Zoe whooping from the audience, Ethan and Lisa cheering from the junior section, even Jennifer Martinez clapping enthusiastically from her spot in the alphabetical lineup. After the ceremony, Maya's parents found her in the crowd of celebrating families. "We're proud of you," her mother said, hugging her tightly. "For graduating?" Maya asked. "For everything," her father replied. "For going to war when you thought it was necessary. For coming home when it was time. For helping other kids who were struggling. For figuring out how to build a life that makes sense to you." Maya looked around at the chaos of graduation. Families taking photos, students hugging goodbye, teachers congratulating their former pupils. A year ago, all of this would have felt overwhelming, too chaotic and emotional to process. Now it just felt like life. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. "What's next?" Zoe asked, appearing at Maya's elbow with her own diploma in hand. "College in the fall. Psychology program with a focus on trauma counseling." "That's perfect for you." "What about you?" "Art school. I'm going to make weird sculptures and pretend they're profound statements about the human condition." Maya laughed. A real laugh, the kind she'd almost forgotten how to make. "You know what's funny?" she said. "What?" 3 years ago, I couldn't wait to get out of this place. I thought high school was the worst thing that could happen to a person. And now, Maya looked around at the familiar building, at the students and teachers who'd become part of her story, at the town that had welcomed her home despite all her rough edges. "Now I know that the worst thing that can happen to a person is losing the ability to connect with other people. High school gave me that back. So no regrets about coming back?" Maya thought about all of it. The panic attacks and the whispered conversations, the academic challenges and the social awkwardness, the slow process of learning to be human again in a world that felt both foreign and familiar. "No regrets," she said finally. "It was exactly as hard as I thought it would be, and exactly what I needed." As the graduation crowd began to disperse, Maya walked to her car with her parents, her diploma tucked under her arm and her future stretching out ahead of her like an open road. She still didn't have all the answers, still woke up some mornings reaching for weapons that weren't there. But she had something better than answers. She had purpose, connection, and the hard-won knowledge that healing wasn't about forgetting the past or returning to who you used to be. It was about integrating all of your experiences, the beautiful and the terrible, into someone strong enough to help others find their own way forward. Maya Chun, war veteran and high school graduate, was finally ready for whatever came next. Dr. Maya Chun straightened her nameplate on the desk of her new office at the Veterans Crisis Center. It had taken 5 years of college, graduate school, internships, and supervised practice, but she was finally exactly where she was supposed to be. Her first client of the day was a 22-year-old Marine who'd lost his leg in combat and was struggling to adjust to civilian life. As he sat across from her, anger and confusion radiating from every gesture, Maya saw herself at 19, broken and lost, trying to figure out how to live in a world that felt nothing like the one she'd left behind. "I don't know why I'm here," he said, not meeting her eyes. "Everyone keeps telling me I need to talk to someone, but what's the point? No one understands what it was like over there." Maya leaned back in her chair and smiled. Not the professional smile she'd learned in graduate school, but the real one she'd first rediscovered on graduation day. "You're right," she said. "Most people don't understand, but I might. Want to tell me about it?" And as her client began to speak, haltingly at first and then with growing confidence, Maya realized that everything she'd been through, the war, the difficult return to high school, the long process of learning to be human again, had been leading to this moment. She was exactly where she belonged. The end.